Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs Podcast, and it is Thursday, and the Cubs are not in the playoffs.
It's day 4.
Day 4 of the offseason.
It is.
Luke Stuckmeyer, Ryan Herrera, Cody Delmendo, and once again, Law on the draw.
Hello.
Is Law our new, I
don't know what's
producer?
going on. We're in a
huge Cubs fan over there.
You know, this whole Joey Spathis situation has really thrown this whole place for a loop.
Show Joey.
Young JoJo. Wonder how he's doing.
I hope he's doing well. I miss him very much.
Getting all dressed up for the real world.
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming he has to wear a suit to his new job.
No suit. He told me no suit. It's
No
business
suit.
casual.
Really?
Anyway.
Is that really a thing?
What's-
He has to look nice?
What's business cash? Is that just like
You
button
probably got to
down?
put a collared shirt on.
Oh, it's not too like a polo.
Yeah.
Not too
That's
bad.
okay.
Yeah.
Not
I thought about
terrible.
wearing not slacks. I thought about wearing khakis in here on Monday just because it was a funeral. But
You wear khakis to a funeral?
I thought about wearing my wedding tuxedo.
I don't dress up very often. But if I have to go to a funeral, I'll put some khakis on.
khakis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not like a
Not
black
like a
suit.
dark-
He is a
No.
black shirt or a dark or navy.
Black pants.
Maybe navy, but
Yeah,
I'd say black.
Khakis are for
Dark
funeral.
gray.
Well,
Interesting.
it depends on what your wardrobe is.
I
If
guess
you
it's
don't
fair.
have, anyways,
That's fair.
we're
That's
way
fair.
off. This ship is way
We're already off
track
the
right
rails.
now.
Off
We're,
track.
That's what I do.
we're heading to the
It's
wrong
the
island
off-season.
at this
It's
point.
the off season. So
We're not even following the buoys. Okay, we have a lot to talk about today. We're still going to talk some about what Jed Hoyer discussed in his funeral, or whatever you want to call it, end of season presser. Starting with
In
sustained
memoriam.
success that he wanted. We're going to also talk about his idea of projections and where teams go from that, and tie that into what happened yesterday on Wednesday in the playoffs in the wild card round. And we'll talk about one of the great young players in Major League Baseball, happens to be in the division, who will be the best young player in the division as early as next year or the year after. Who might it be for these teams in the Cubs division? Getting to all that. Let's start with the sustained success. Let's get right to Jed Hoyer's comment, which this is something that they've been feeding out since Jed and Theo came here, really, that their goal is not to have the Cubs in the playoffs one year, but to have them right there in the playoffs, getting many, many chances at the playoffs so that eventually you get your World Series. They had a pretty good run, obviously, with 3 trips to the NLCS. Here's Jed after another season without going to the postseason.
Yeah. Well, we haven't truly gotten into our off-season planning mode yet, so I think characterizing what we're going to do this winter, I think it's too early for that. I think in general, I think the goal is to build something that's sustainable. Craig actually talked about building 90-win teams. What he really means is building teams that can project that year after year after year. That's a difficult thing to do. Only 3 teams in baseball were projected for 90 wins going into the season. So to get to a place where we can build our projections up and consistently make the postseason year after year, I think there's a level of discipline to do that. You don't want to take wild swings, and you don't want to do things that are going to expose you long term. I think the goal here is getting to a place where the playoffs are an expectation every single year, that we're in a position to sustain success. I think we did that before. I think we got to a place where we made the playoff, I think 6 out of 7 years. I think in doing that, we probably did take some chances. I think that led to a little bit of a trough here, but I do think that getting back to just making good decisions on a long-term basis, drafting, developing well, I think truly having a healthy organization can lead us to that sustained success where, like I said, the playoffs are an expectation and not a surprise, and not a one-year thing. And that's the goal, is not not a 1 year thing and pushing all in for a year. It's about how do we build it up to sustain that. And I think we're on the right path of doing that. And I think if we keep making good decisions and stacking those on top of each other, we'll get to that point.
For those of you that are listening in podcast form, you should go back and check out the YouTube feed to see Ryan's great camera work on these videos. Just outstanding. It got a little crooked there, but
bit.
in general, pretty steady. Pretty steady.
Have we put the entire press conference up?
No, we're not. I don't think we're doing that.
Okay. It would be a good idea because the Cubs
now it's late.
The Cubs and Marquee haven't put the entire thing up. We would get a ton of views if we put ours up.
Okay.
Just saying.
All right. Let's do it.
All right, we'll think about it. There were a couple really good comments while that soundbite was going on. James Colstock says, Jed puts the sus in sustained. It's one of my favorite comments from James. That's pretty good. That could be a T-shirt we could print.
Put a star.
I don't think it would, ingratiate us into the Cubs organization. I don't think they'd love it, but it's a pretty funny.
They'd walk up to Ryan in the clubhouse and be like, "What is your problem?"
Gary Ross says,
Yeah,
how would this team have sustained success? Keep being mid? Yeah, that's the problem. That's what I said. Like, you can sustain mediocre baseball too, but he's saying success. And then it goes back to the whole conversation of, is it just getting the postseason is success? Yeah, I would start there. That's it. And how do you do that? It's not a single fix. But if there were a single fix, we would start with the thing we've talked about over and over. Am I wrong? The superstar?
Signing Juan Soto.
A superstar on your roster would be the first step.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to have a farm system that is constantly feeding and developing your own players.
Mm-hmm.
That is crucial for sustained success. But so is spending some big money, I think.
Yeah.
What team's done it? The Astros? They're out, but aren't they kind of the blueprint for sustained success?
I would argue it's the Dodgers.
Dodgers, Astros?
And Dodgers, Braves are on there as well. Like the Braves, you saw the Braves this year, all the injuries they've dealt with. They were still an 89-win team, made the wild card, and I know they're out, I guess, but that's an example of even in your nearly worst case scenario season for the Braves, they're still a nearly 90-win team. They won 89 games and they made the playoffs. That's the level you want to get to. The Dodgers the same way. They've dealt with a bunch of injuries and they won 94 games or whatever it was. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the teams you look at as they have figured out the formula for building sustainable success while also spending a lot of money. Right? They spend a lot of money on, the Dodgers, obviously Ohtani, Yamamoto, Mookie Betts. Spending a lot of money, but also bringing up their own guys, developing their own players that help supplement that roster, and they're winning the NL West every single year. They're in the playoffs every single year. They're a World Series contender every single year. They're not winning World Series every year. But the more you give yourself the chance, the better your odds are you're gonna luck your way into one, right? The more you're in, you can't win a World Series if you're not giving yourself chances to do it. And the Dodgers have been the team that is over the last decade consistently giving themselves a chance to at least try to win a World Series. That's the I don't know what I'm trying to say. That's the
blueprint for how you're doing it. I think it's all three of those teams. The Astros have been there and won it multiple times. They've been there a lot.
I mean, if you say World Series, sure. I would argue even the Brewers can be put in that category, as much as it pains me to say it.
Yeah.
Whether you want to blame the Cubs for not making their team good to why the Brewers are winning, that's more delusional than me being delusional, in my opinion, based off the players that they've developed, the players that they put out there, the fact that they do have a player who got over a $200 million contract. He's not playing right now because of back injury, but they've done that. And then the biggest thing for them for sure is development. That's the big reason why they're even in this position. They lost all those players that we've talked about, but Jackson Chourio, we're going to talk about eventually, it is a stud, like I said yesterday. And they, other players, Joey Ortiz, they had Tobias Myers, who kind of broke out for them this year. Development is important as much as spending money. In organizations like the Brewers need to be able to do that to have sustained success. But the best organizations, the ones that you guys are mentioning, are the ones that have the best chance to win a World Series, because not only do they throw out the money, they also continue to develop players. So to me, it's never going to be about one or the other. The Cubs, when they won the World Series, their core was a large portion of it was guys that they drafted, developed, brought up, whatever, from the
traded for
the action of just tanking for 5 years, basically. Like, let's just put it simply, right? It's more than that, but they did a lot of that, right? But then they couldn't keep that sustained success going because they couldn't keep developing on their farm system. It was that and the fact that, Tom decided that they wanted to cut payroll after 2019, So,
but the Brewers, you mentioned the Brewers. You're right. In the chat, somebody said sustained success is winning your division. Agreed with that. Of course, what the Brewers don't do that the teams that have had the better sustained success, which in my eyes is getting to a World Series, winning a World Series, because they've never won it.
Well, the Astros had 7 straight ALCS
appearances. That's what I'm talking about. And multiple championships. And same thing with the Braves. And now the Dodgers don't have the multiple championships, but they're always in it and a major factor in the postseason. The money part's the second piece of it. And you have to have both if you want to be a real player every year.
And that's why I don't necessarily include the Brewers in. Like, they obviously have had sustained success.
Believe me, I wish I didn't have to say it.
Since the Cubs started going down, obviously the Brewers are the team that took that place atop the Central. But the reason I didn't mention them earlier is because they're not in the same position as the Cubs. Like, maybe the Royals want to look at the Brewers as like, oh, this is sustained success for a small market team. The Cubs aren't a small market team. They don't have to do things like the Brewers. Like, obviously developing your players is a huge part of that. But you also have a lot of money as the Chicago Cubs. Like, you should be more looking to build a blueprint or build a sustained winner in the model of what the Dodgers have done, what the Braves have done, what the Astros have done. Like, you have the money to do that and spend on players, specifically the Dodgers. Like, the Dodgers, I know, are maybe a little bit bigger of a market than the Cubs, but not huge. Like, they're in the same tier of markets. The Cubs could, if they make the right moves, build that kind of follow that blueprint and build a sustained winner. It's just about making the right moves and getting yourself there.
I would say over a large portion of time, too, the Cardinals can be included. I know the last 2 years hasn't been what I've grown to know my entire life, but they have done a little bit of both, too. Whether it was when they traded for Arenado and Goldschmidt, and they had a few years there where they were real legit contenders going to the NLCS in 2019, but over the course of my life, they developed really well, too. I mean, Pujols and Molina and all those guys that made me want to pull
Molina's
my hair
mid,
out.
but that's another podcast. I know.
Listen, I'm giving too much credit at this point, but I think that I've always wanted the Cubs to find a way to be at least somewhat like what the Cardinals have been most of my life, which is just make the playoffs every year. They make the playoffs every year. I've said this many times. I do not care how you do it. If you make the playoffs every year, I won't sit here and question the front office or ownership nearly as much as a lot of people in our YouTube chat or even now. I promise you, and if you go back and look back at or listen to a lot of our audio from the last 2.5 years of doing this podcast, I have done a lot of Jed defending, but there's not a lot of Jed defending to be had anymore.
There's a point where it needs to produce the results.
And exactly. And so, like, I wouldn't do that if this team was making the playoffs.
I think
and they can't. They haven't.
And when the Cardinals lost their way, they just fired their guy.
Yeah,
that's true.
And it was pretty quick.
Yeah. So I think
you're not talking about the front office, are you?
Yeah, their front office.
They didn't fire. He's stepping down.
He's stepping down.
It's a very weird situation.
But they're making changes, and their window of not being very good is pretty small.
Yeah, no, they won't be down forever. I think that's part of it. But I think when we're talking about going back to the idea of the sustained success, like, the Cubs looked like they were there, right? Like, they were making the playoffs every year. They made 3 straight NLCSs. Like, but they didn't do the moves to sustain it in the way the Dodgers have, right? Like, they didn't. The farm system development wasn't great. There were just we know the reasons why they didn't sustain that and why they're in the position they're at now, right? Like, Jed's job and what Jed wants to do is to learn the lessons from that, get back to the level where they're making the playoffs every year, maybe win a World Series, whatever. But then also learn the lessons on the things they did wrong, and correct them. He has to get there. Like, that's the plan, but, like, he has to absolutely get there and make them right moves and do that. And that's what I'm saying as you got to follow that blueprint and you got to make the right moves to get there. Otherwise, it's just kind of wasted time.
There is a place where you can find sustained success, and Ryan is about to tell you about that place. It's called GameTime. GameTime Picks.
Absolutely find sustained success with GameTime, and GameTime's new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I said it yesterday. CHGO, one of my favorite EDM artists, was in town last week. Yeah, I asked Luke if he wanted to go. He didn't want to go, but I did check GameTime. I used the GameTime Picks thing. The GameTime Picks filtered out the fluff on the tickets for me. Found the right ticket that I wanted. Got a great deal and went to go see CHGO. Fantastic show. I highly recommend. But I will say one of my favorite parts about GameTime is the all-in pricing. You toggle that feature. It shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. It gives you those your seat view. So like I went to the Huntington Bank Pavilion at Northerly Island. Never been there before. Didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. I used GameTime. Gave me a panoramic view from your seat in the app before I bought it, and you can too. GameTime gives you the lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. And GameTime's ticket coverage means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it?
Game time. Want to tell you, first of all, we are sponsored by the Chicago Sports Network, the home of the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox games. CHSN will broadcast more than 300 live games per year across the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox, and will feature a full lineup of original Chicago-focused sports content. They're also Chicago-based, just down the street, Chicago-built, and Chicago to the core. And they're bringing it to every corner of Chicago across our 77 neighborhoods and beyond. At CHSN, Chicago comes first. Visit chsn.com for more information on how to watch the Bulls, the Blackhawks, and the White Sox games all season long. Jim Troll Cook is here in the live YouTube chat. Hello to him.
Is he in the sales office right now?
Yeah, he's over there trolling. Or
tell him to get back to work.
Seriously, yeah. Look at him selling things. Instead, we're advertising for the opponent or like someone that's our direct competitor.
Our buddy Ron, who likes to show up and is a big supporter of us and shows up at a lot of the watch-alongs.
On the Birds, yeah. He did come to the Milwaukee event this year, too.
That's right. Says, I got sixth row from the stage to see Dane Cook off GameTime for $60.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Is he... Are you talking about the comedian Dane Cook? Is that the guy?
Dane Cook's still around.
He's still around?
Who knew?
He's big on TikTok now. He does a lot of TikTok lives.
Really?
I really like Dane Cook.
I always thought he was fairly funny.
Employee of the month.
Is that Jim Brewer guy around still?
The
guy that does Goat Boy?
I sat front row for Jim Brewer back in the 90s.
Or Good Luck Chuck.
Do you know
Good
Jim
Luck
Brewer?
Chuck was another one.
The guy that did Goat Boy? Goat Boy was a great...
He was in Half Baked. He was the one that looked very stoned all the time without doing anything.
Have you seen Half Baked?
Half Baked? Yeah.
Half Baked?
I'm a millennial. I've seen Half Baked.
Right. He does a Goat Boy.
Next ad break.
He does Goat Boys. Half boy, half
Chappelle.
goat. It's a pretty good little bit.
Seen a long time ago. You ever seen Employee of the Month?
No, I have not. I mean, I've seen all the Chappelle stand-ups, and I remember the Chappelle show.
It's Dane Cook. It's the Dane Cook movie.
And Good Luck Chuck.
With Jessica Simpson. Good Luck Chuck is Jessica Alba.
Yeah.
Second only to Selena Gomez in my heart.
Chicago Theater, great show. Dane Cook. How about that? I didn't know. Anyways, so yeah, there are some interesting teams to watch and see. I think it's just like it was last year. It's fascinating to watch the teams that are doing well and in the postseason and say, A, how are they doing it versus how the Cubs have been doing it? And B, how will the Cubs look at that team and try to use that in their offseason to spin whatever they want to spin for their own narrative? Because I think it's possible it happens again. Jackson Churio provided the power for the Brewers yesterday, presented by Illinois pork producers. Savor the flavor, savor the gains, and celebrate any occasion by enjoying the best pork produced by Illinois pig farmers. Facing elimination, Churio hit 2 home runs to help the Brewers come back and even the series. It's all on the line tonight. 20-year-old rookie My question is, will he be the best player in the division very soon?
I'm sure Cody was really happy seeing both home runs.
Well, I just, we were talking about stars yesterday, and like Luke said that the Brewers don't have a star, and like I've been paying attention to Jackson
Superstar.
Chourio. That guy's going to be a superstar.
Well,
he's 20 years old.
That's pretty much what I'm asking.
He's 20 years old, hit 2 home runs in an elimination game, and I mean, there is a reason that the Brewers just gave him $80 million before he even took a major league at bat. I think he's going to be a superstar. I think he can be better than Yelich at Yelich's peak, just based off the tools that he has. Like, it's not just the power. He has, he made a great catch in game 1, too, out in left field for them. And he's got speed, too. So I'm sure I don't even know how many stolen bases he has. But he's, as much as it pains me, like he's going to be a stud for a long time. That probably annoys the living crap out of me. So
and we saw it take him a little bit to get going. Like the first half,
yeah,
he went into the All-Star break with a 678 OPS. Like, not great, obviously, but he's a rookie. Like, you expect that.
Rookie adjustment period.
Yeah,
we saw with PCA. For example.
Oh, you mentioned PCA.
Michael Busch has had his own.
We happen to have the numbers for both guys.
Well, I was going to say, Chourio ended up in the second half with a 914 OPS. So he only ended up with a 791 OPS overall in the season. But a 914 OPS over the last 2 months of the season, 2.5 months. He's a really good player. And showed that he's a really good player over a long stretch, and now we're seeing it on a national stage. Anyway,
he outperformed his projection for the year too.
So
do you have the numbers you said?
We have the numbers for PCA in his first year versus Jackson Chourio in his first year. Jackson Chourio, 275 batting average, PCA 237. 21 homers Chourio, 10 for Pete Crow-Armstrong. 79 RBI for Chourio, 47 RBI, and the F4 is 3.9 for Chourio, 2.7 for Pete Crow-Armstrong. One of the biggest differences is 148 games to 123 games. That also doesn't factor into right now. Pete Crow-Armstrong was told this season not even to worry about offense.
So I wouldn't even look at games. I would look at plate appearances, because even when he came up in like late April and May, it's not like he was playing every single day.
Right.
He didn't start playing every single day until the second time he came back up. You know what I mean? Because they sent him down, went down, had that hilarious moment after the guy threw at him in the minors or whatever, and he hit a homer off him. Like a week after that, he got called back up.
Yeah.
And he struggled immediately at the plate. And, I think on a base of it, like Chourio and PCA are like, I would say that they're two of the next great young stars in this division, in baseball in general. But it's not even just like this entire division has some guys with potential.
Oh, you're teasing a future podcast potentially next week where we're going to rank the young players in the division.
But
there you go.
Rankings.
I think it's hard to I think it's kind of hard to compare these two guys. Like, maybe you can compare defensively. I would take PCA defensively over almost any player in baseball at this point, based off what I've already seen. Maybe speed as well. I think only Eli De La Cruz had a better sprint speed than him this year.
He was 99th percentile.
But I think Chourio for sure will probably be the better hitter overall. But that doesn't mean that I think PCA is not going to be a good hitter. So it's just, I hope I'm wrong. I hope PCA turns out to be a better hitter. If he hits like he did in August for an entire season, then we really can like compare the two. But as far as like impact for the team and impact going forward per like potential wise, like, yeah, I'd say they're both right up there. I mean, I think PCA is, the future star for the Cubs. So, and this guy already is, and can be better. 3.9 Fangraphs WAR this year. If this guy plays like he did from June on to this point, he's going to be like a 6 WAR guy one day. And how many times have I said PCA can be a 6 WAR player? Like, to me, impact and potential is around the same, but I just think they're different players.
Yeah, I think the question's also forgetting of who else is in the division that's outside of the Brewers and Cubs. Obviously,
there's
Eli De La Cruz is.
Yeah. Hey, I'm telling you that I think it's next week, because I started going through the names in my head and I'm like, wow, there's some good young players in this division, and so that bodes well for this division being very competitive moving forward.
Yeah.
And so that's when you start to look at what do you have that they don't.
Most part.
Yeah, It has been, but sometimes you look at like the Pirates and you say they're never going to get there because they're never going to. Well, if their prospects continue to add up,
and if they actually spent some money, even at the
just
level,
a little, just
even
a
if
little
they
bit.
spent money at the level the Brewers do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the Tigers are sort of showing you like randomly there'll be years where teams can sneak their way in. Now that's not a path that the Cubs should be thinking about taking,
Right.
but the Pirates can look at the Tigers and say, oh well, look, we can do that. We have young players too, and we can get hot and get into a postseason and create some noise. So it's not. I know it is the haves and the have-nots, but it doesn't always just have to be the season's over for teams like that. Look at the Royals. Same thing with the Royals. You get enough good young players, you can get there. Doesn't guarantee sustained success, however, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The Brewers and the Rays are probably the best examples.
Did you enjoy watching the Brewers come back yesterday?
No. You know how many?
I thought
You know
they
how
were
many?
dead, and then the Undertaker sat up.
Yeah.
You know how many tweets I have in the drafts ready to be let go?
I know you do.
Yeah,
Cody's a troll.
I'm a sick person,
Cody's a
brother.
troll.
Yeah,
I'm a sick
and
piece
nobody
of
holds
work.
a grudge like Delmendo.
Yeah.
Del Grudjo.
So yeah, I was
Grudjo.
pretty. I
I
mean,
gotta think a better one.
I was-
for that.
honestly, the moment the moment they put the camera on Madden the first time he came out there, or whenever he came out for that 8th inning, I was like, this guy looks scared. This shit's over.
Cody Grudjo.
I mean, that pitch he threw to the dude that
It's
hit it.
Garrett Mitchell.
No, I
Garrett.
think the Churio one.
Garrett
the
Mitchell's a
tying
good
one
young
or
player
the go
too.
ahead.
The one that Churio hit to the fucking moon and
Oh,
right,
yeah.
where he just like he turned his head. He was like, God damn it! Like he just knew.
Mm.
Just a
Like he knew.
frickin' meatball.
Yeah. But the one that Garrett Mitchell hit, it was like he was looking curveball first pitch and he guessed correctly.
Waited on that one. Man. Waited
And,
back on that one.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Madden, but like he just looks scared out there, in my opinion. Basically, if you want to use Dell metrics, he did not look confident. The moment that inning started, he did not look confident, and I was like, this is not going well. Especially after he allowed them to tie the game with the Chorio home run. I was like, and then Adames gets a hit with 2 strikes. You know, it's just it felt very Mets.
Yeah.
You know, so this game 3 tonight is going to be interesting because it's like, of course, ESPN had to bring up that it was 20 straight games the Brewers have lost when they trail after 7 innings for them to finally snap that streak. And then the Mets, they're just so notoriously known for like being the Mets.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
That's how it goes.
it's like how many, like what history against each other is going to prevail tonight. And
I've never been a bigger Mets fan.
I like C.
me
Ruby.
neither.
I like C. Ruby 23's comment. They need to bring Grimace out tonight.
Yeah.
Imagine if
for
Grimace just
real.
walks on the field and
Yeah.
This might be the
That's-
first time in my life
that'd be good.
that I'm rooting for the New York Mets for something.
Yeah.
I've never been a Mets fan.
Yeah.
I will.
Not in any. I can't think of a matchup where I said to myself, "I'm pulling for the Mets this time."
How about 2000 when Clemens threw a bat at Piazza? I think I was probably rooting for the Mets over
Okay.
the Yankees.
I will.
Okay,
Say, I
maybe.
will say the only
young
times
for
that
that.
I'm like kind of happy that the Brewers have done anything is when Pete Alonso fails, because I'm so tired of talking about Pete Alonso coming to the Cubs, and that's why I sent that tweet out last night about like comparing him and Michael Busch's numbers, and they're not different really in my opinion, except for there's a few the home run total is different, but as far as value of player and slash line and all, it's not different really. They have very similar seasons, and so like it's not even that I don't think Pete Alonso is a productive player. It's more about I just don't think that Pete Alonso is going to make a difference on this team
I won't be.
unless you had both. Like my thinking is Pete Alonso, if he were to come to the Cubs, you're moving Michael Busch.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Likely.
if you
Unless you're DHing
if you were
Alonso.
somehow able to put both on the team, that's a different story. But I just don't see how they would do that.
And keep in mind, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. The Brewers did almost kill some of us this year,
Yeah,
allegedly.
not
allegedly.
You said
I
I
was
was
there.
a troll.
watched
Not
it.
alleged,
You
yeah.
said I was a troll. I'm just sticking up for our guy Greg Braggs.
You're a troll.
I can't wait till he's majority owner of the
You
Brewers.
can embrace the fact that you're a troll.
That is true too. But a large
Both can
point of
be
it
true.
is I have to defend our guy Greg Braggs Jr.
That's
All
right. Sunnyside. Sunnyside is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping, a place where all kinds of visitors are welcome to explore, discover, and purchase a wide array of high-quality products. Sunnyside has everything you need. One-stop shop for all your cannabis needs. Sunnyside has an expertly curated menu with over 100 strains to choose from, plus easy online ordering and in-store pickup. If you're starting out, Sunnyside has expert advice and brands we know you'll love, like Good News and Mindy's. If you're a pro, like Law, then we've got you covered with over 100 strains on the menu and new ones added weekly. We know you'll love Cresco and FloraCal's incredible quality and consistent products. It's easy to order online. They're here to help you in store. Here for the fall tea times, it's Good News Tea Time disposable vape, bringing the classic lemonade flavor that's perfect for the golf course because we all need a little help staying loose on the green. Free spirits and vapes and cartridges are all new from Good News with lush mango flavor. These vapes are perfect for tapping into your flower power. Visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter the promo code, write it down, HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Again, HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Bright buys every day only for 21 and older or Illinois medical card holders.
Prize Picks, guys. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You have to be correct, which just emphasizes you have to be correct to do that, right? It's the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. It's the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so your lineups stay in play, which is a huge deal to me because of the amount of times that a guy gets hurt in the middle of a game and this costs me money, it makes me want to pull my hair out. Or if you want to talk about fantasy, talk about your fantasy football team too. It doesn't help you in your fantasy lineup, right? But Prize Picks they have that insurance policy so it doesn't go against you, which is a huge deal. So sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guarantees. They also have weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Tonight, Thursday Night Football, Baker Mayfield, more than 10.5 rushing yards.
Nice.
Bijan Robinson, more than 26.5 receiving yards.
Good.
Nice.
He's on my fantasy team.
And Bucky Irving to score touchdown. Lock it in.
Nice.
Okay.
All right, that's what I like
Irving.
tonight.
Oregon Duck? Bucky Irving?
I don't know. He's just a running back for the Bucks.
I would have thought Badgers, but
Maybe.
Yeah, he does sound like a
should have gone to Wisconsin.
Bucky, sure.
Bucky Irving.
Your name's Bucky. You got
Yeah.
to pick
So-
your school.
If you're interested in writing that Prize Picks entry tonight, download the app today and use code CHGO to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CHGO to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game, brother.
C. Ruby 23 says, I'm a Ducks fan and Bucky was nice for us, while Craig Brindle says, Buck the Frewers.
Yeah.
Interesting.
By the way, Bucky Irving did go to Minnesota and Oregon.
Oh,
Shout out Law for getting that right.
Minnesota, too.
Also, he's an Illinois
about
guy.
that,
I didn't
eh?
know that. Bucky Irving went to Hillcrest High School.
Sure, Hillcrest.
All I
here?
know is he's had
Apparently.
some nice games of
He was-
recent.
he was born
I
in
think he
Chicago.
scores tonight.
No kidding. Hillcrest.
According to his Wikipedia page.
If you don't want to do the Bijan Robinson receiving
Yeah,
prop,
Hillcrest
then
High School.
I'd like him to
Wisconsin
score
missed on
tonight, too.
that.
Country Club Hills, Illinois.
Shane Eubanks, same born in Chicago. All right.
There you go,
Well, there you
Shane.
go. I somehow, some way, without even realizing, turned it into a Chicago Prize
There you
Picks
go.
entry.
Shout out.
Boom.
I'm a fan
Great
of Bucky
tie-in.
Irving now.
It's the Delmendo special.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about sustained success. Now, one of the ways of taking your sustained success and then hitting the lottery or winning the World Series or getting to the World Series, according to Jed Hoyer, is not having players reach their projections, and he almost said this just for getting to the postseason, the way I took this soundbite. We're going to listen to it. He's talking about players outperforming their projections, and I believe he ties it into the need for a star player, correct? All right, let's hear it, Law. Let's hear it.
I think that you guys have asked me a few times this year about do we need a star, like star players, and stars can help get through those slumps. And certainly, Cody was a top 10 MVP guy last year and felt like he played like a 5+ win player for most of the year and carried us for big stretches, and that really did help us a ton during that stretch. It's a hard thing to figure. I looked at it, like if you look at the 12 teams in the playoffs, like every team in the playoffs has a guy that had 5 or more wins this year. So there's no question that when you're looking to beat projections, when you're looking to have that excellent season, having players just outperform expectations is a big part of it. But on the flip side of that, of that group, I think like 5 of the 14 5-win players on playoff teams, only 5 of them were projected to be 5 or more win players. The rest of them just had career years. They had fantastic seasons and outperformed. I do think that's something we lacked this year. I think when you look at our season, we had a lot of guys on the team that had good years. They kind of got back to their numbers, like maybe on projection, a hair above, a hair below. No one really had that, carrying year that Cody had last year. I do think we missed that. I think there's a number of guys on our roster that can absolutely do that going forward, and I think that's what we have to think through, like how do we put every guy in a position to do that, because certainly we can look for external things, but also like looking for like how do we push these guys to have a 5 or 6 win season, like what do we need to do to put them in that position, and that's something we'll be looking at really carefully, because it may be external, it may well be internal to get that, to have that kind of year, because a lot of the guys that did that for these playoff teams weren't expected to do that either.
The camera work was better in that one.
It was better?
I think so.
Credit to you.
I was so zoned out during it that I didn't even pay attention to the camera work. I apologize.
Oh, wow.
I've heard that soundbite interpreted multiple ways by multiple people.
Yeah.
I hear it as we're not going to get a star player, superstar player. The only way we're going to get a superstar player and get to the playoffs is if our guys over and exceed their projections, multiple players each year. That's the only way you can really get there. Other people have heard that and say it sounds like Jed Hoyer is telling Tom Ricketts, give me a superstar. Tom, give me a superstar if you want me to win. I don't hear that in there, but I guess it's just different ways of listening to the same thing, because it is sort of, it's a word soup. It's just like words floating around all over the place. How do you interpret what he's saying there?
I don't necessarily see it the way you see it, or I think I'm somewhere in the middle of like, I think Jed, like he was never gonna say we need a star straight up. Like he wasn't gonna say that at this end of season press conference. One, that's just not how he operates. And two, like if you say like, we need a star, and the biggest star in the market is Juan Soto, like that's music to Scott Boras' ears, right? So he's not gonna say that straight up. I think the issue with Jed and like why people are kind of mad or angry about what he said, like he's not wrong in saying like we need players to outperform projections. I think it was in this quote maybe when he said like that's how you have a magical season. If a magical season is just making the playoffs, then you don't belong in that job. If a magical season to you is making the playoffs, right, you shouldn't be the president of baseball operations for a baseball team. To have a magical season, a la, win the World Series even, but like have a deep run in the playoffs, like you do need players to outperform projections. And that's what he's saying is they didn't have anyone really outperform projections this season like what Cody Bellinger did last year. Cody Bellinger at points in time was, easily the best player on the team, but carried that team for stretches of time in the season. I think maybe Seiya outperformed his projections this year. Hap maybe, but like
he's real close to it.
He's real close
because he had the bad stretch in there, right? Like he might have, but
well, look,
I remember hearing a soundbite
And
Hap
Shota
was
had
asked
to have.
specifically
Shota
about
probably
this.
did, yeah. So they probably had a couple. And I'm like talking more position player wise,
Right.
Because obviously he was doing the
But
Cody
nobody was
Bellinger.
projected to be a 3-WAR player and ended up a 7-WAR
Actually,
player.
Hap was like right about what he was.
Great. Like, yeah,
well,
I get
so,
that.
But what I'm saying is, they didn't have that. Is what he's saying. They didn't have that at all this year, and having a couple guys do that, not have a couple guys like really outperform their projections. Maybe they make the playoffs, maybe they don't, whatever. But to have the kind of seasons that like lead to deep playoff runs or lead to World Series wins, like you need to have guys outperform projections. That's why, like Cody, you tweeted out yesterday about the Padres with like Jackson Merrill and Jurickson Profar. We look at the numbers, like those two guys really, really outperform projections. So did they trade away Juan Soto this offseason? Yeah. They got a few good players back, and they had a guy like Profar who just never had a season close to what he had this year. Way outperformed projections. They had Jackson Merrill come up as a rookie, way outperformed projections, and they're looking at a team that won, 11 more games this year than they did last year. So you need guys to outperform projections. I think that's a valid point, and people are getting mad about that. I don't really get why that angers people, but I think what it is that just the overemphasis on we need players to outperform projections. Like I think by him bringing it up a couple times and saying the phrase outperform projections a couple times, because he has said it in the past too. I think that's what is angering people, because again, like I said, it's a valid point. Like you need to have players outperform projections to have special seasons, but you also need certainty, and what brings certainty is star players. Star players bring certainty because even if they don't meet their projections, a guy like Juan Soto doesn't meet his projections next year, he's probably still having a really good season.
His floor's as good as somebody else exceeding their projection.
He's probably still having an all-star season. So I think the point I'm trying to make is Jed is right in saying that they need guys to outperform projections. They didn't really have that this year, but what he's not saying, and I don't expect him to say it in this setting, is that they do need star players. They do need guys who provide the certainty of my projections are so high, even if I don't reach it, I'm still going to have a really good season for you. Like they need those guys. So you need a mix of those guys, like with the Padres, like Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, right? They didn't have superstar seasons, but they still had really good seasons because they're stars. They underperformed their projections. They still had really good seasons.
They would be looked at as some of the best players on the Cubs this year.
Exactly.
With the bad years that they had
and
their standards.
And we would look at them as like down years, right?
Correct.
And we would look at it as like those guys had down years when they still had really good seasons. So having star players provides some level of certainty that a baseline of a floor of whatever, that when you bring in the guys like Jackson Merrill and Jurickson Profar who way outperform their projections, that's how you have a good team. That's how you win 93 games and make the playoffs and are going to the NLDS right now.
Tatis finished the regular season with a 3.2 Fangraphs score. He was projected for a 5.9.
Yeah.
Machado was projected for like a 4.8. He finished with like a 3.4 Fangraphs score. That's like one whole win above replacement right there is or the difference. But because Jackson Merrill was in the Rookie of the Year race, Michael King came over and basically took Blake Snell's role along with Dylan Cease, which Dylan Cease was a little bit, I wouldn't say that was a breakout. Like we knew that what he can be. We saw it with the White Sox. But to replace Blake Snell, you added a proven starting pitcher who's had success on top of a guy who had a little bit of success. But if you just look at his innings alone this year with the Padres, I would consider it a breakout with the fact that he had an ERA under 3 and he pitched the most innings of his career. And he just pitched a playoff game and had 12 strikeouts in game 1 against the Braves. So, and Profar, we looked it up. He has no individual accolades at all until this year, and he's 31 years old. He was an all-star for the first time this year at age 31. Like, we could go back to the 2016 Cubs and look at certain players that were way better. We've talked about Kyle Hendricks in recent weeks about how he outperformed what anyone wanted or what anyone thought in 2016, right? So, yes, I agree with Jed in the fact that you need some people to outperform, but they just don't have guys who their floor is still sustainable to keep your team having
Well, and that's
success.
what I'm saying is like you need that mix of both.
But
You
also
absolutely need
one
to
of the
mix them
points,
both.
I think, of your tweet where you were talking about, hey, the Cubs should look at the Padres, and that's sort of what they need to do. You're talking about trading Soto. First of all, that is a bold move. You're trading one of the 5 best players easily in baseball right now when he's not even 26 years old at that point. And that they're allowed to do that, or they're able to do that, because they have other superstar players on their team. So they're not losing their only superstar. They're able to take that superstar and turn him into new chess pieces, cheaper chess pieces to keep it kind of moving. That's how they're trying to do it. But what the Cubs haven't done yet is you can't just say projections, because look at the contracts the Padres have. This is San Diego. Machado underachieved, but he's still a great player. He's a $350 million player.
Tatis is like 388.
The Cubs don't have a $200 million player yet. They have Machado at 350. They have Tatis at 340. They have Bogarts at 280. They have 3 guys that are higher paid than anybody in the Cubs organization
ever.
And then they have Darvish at 100, Musgrove at 100, Cronenworth at 80 million. Like,
Musgrove was really bad.
You need to do both. You can't just come in here and say, well, we hope Ian Happ hits 50 home runs next year, and maybe this is the year that Seiya hits 45. I don't believe that's what he's saying, but
that's not what we're saying. And like Gary keeps throwing that in the chat. I'm like, that's not what he's saying.
That isn't what he's saying. Yeah. The problem is when you're surrounding it and juxtaposing it next to the season you just had.
It's good vocabulary.
That's the way people are going to hear it.
Yeah,
and you have to know that. So when somebody asks you, do I need a superstar player? You have to say, yes, superstars change your franchise. And so does exceeding projections.
No, yeah.
Then it's a totally different soundbite. But he went on and on about projections and how players have to be better than their projections. You're like,
that's my point.
Dear God, how good do you want Seiya to be next year? How good do you want these very nice to very good players to be? But they're not going to be MVPs next year.
But that's my point. Is like you guys are saying exactly what I'm saying. Is like you need to have
I'm not disagreeing with you.
My point is to the people that are like what you're saying is that you're hearing it, but then that's what kind of why I say when I said on Tuesday, like you can't take too many big things from press conferences like that, because he's not going to say exactly what you want to say. He's not going to say the Cubs are absolutely going to go out and sign a star this offseason, even if that's part of their offseason wish list or part of their plan to go sign a star. He can't say that. He can, but he didn't. He didn't, right? And I don't expect him to say that.
I love that you've taken my role.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying is
I'm just enjoying watching Luke get mad.
Give me the beer bat.
And like Gary's saying, like he disagrees with me, saying Jed definitely is alluding to people need to overperform. He's not alluding to it. That's what he said. They need players to overperform projections to have a special year. And that is what he's saying, and that's what I'm saying.
And you know what I'm saying to Jed in response to that? And that's why the last 2 years have been extremely disappointing, because we all sat here in the predictions for the preseason and said, what if Seiya becomes this MVP player? And what if Morel hits 40 home runs this year? And what if those are all guys going over projections? And you know where that left us? 83. 2 years in a row, sitting here doing the same shows over and over, watching the Brewers in the postseason. Like, if you're only hoping for over projection.
No, and I think we all agree that like hoping for all your players to overperform and have a special year is not the way to go.
That's not a plan.
You need to have certainty.
That's not a plan.
You need to have certainty, whether that's your young players establishing themselves and becoming, really good established players, going out and getting stars. You're the Cubs. You have the ability and the resources to do that. Like, you need to have certainty and star players provide that certainty.
I'll agree with Cody in this, and I just wanted to see if you agree with this. They do need to take a player they like, Juan Soto. Like, they don't have Juan Soto, but they need to take a player that they like this offseason and create a bold move. They're not going to get the return that the Padres got for Soto for anybody on their roster, because there's nobody on their roster who can even sniff Juan Soto. Yeah. But you do have players that other teams would like. We've talked about how they have good players. You need to start taking some of those players and or prospects and start finding a way to turn them into a superstar player. It's not easy to do, but that's why you really won the World Series. You turned a Scott Feldman who was good into a Jake Arrieta. Was that lightning in a bottle? Yes, it was. But there were other good moves that came along with it. It was finding Strop to go with him. It was
trading for Fowler.
Trading for Dexter Fowler. It was taking Andrew Cashner, who I thought was the future of the rotation, and saying, wow, this guy is our best. I'm not saying it's Cade Horton now, but this guy, we really think highly of this guy as a starter, but we can get Anthony Rizzo, and I think now they kind of just did that with Michael Busch.
And maybe he gets there.
So maybe he gets there, but they have to find a way to make a bold move that turns the tide for this franchise.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So the whole point of why
that could just be signing a star.
Yes.
It could just be signing a
star. The easier way would be to sign Soto.
Yeah.
Law, you want to switch the camera? Thanks.
Sorry, my friends.
I wanted him to switch the camera before I said what I was going to say.
Cody's going to need to focus.
Cody needs to be on the camera.
No, it was not even just to me.
I just want everybody to buckle up.
He said this is going to be clipped. We need me
Perhaps
on camera.
The
whole point.
Christian A says Luke is right.
I don't necessarily want it just on me. I'm just saying the whole point of me sending that tweet is, one, I was trying to have a little bit of optimism because I've just been very, very dead inside for the last month. All right, that's one reason. Number two is the Padres, they have been able to see different players and see how they can impact their team in a positive way more than what the nerds in these projection websites are putting out there. And all I'm saying is that the Cubs, they can't run into 2025 with basically the same offense. And I know these last handful of days I've said things along the lines of like, well, I like Nico Horner, but Matt Shaw might have a higher offensive profile, but also he's going to be a rookie, so we don't even know what's going to happen. So that leads me back to wanting to keep Nico Horner, Like everything that I feel like I've said in recent weeks has led to me thinking, well, will it be better than what the Cubs already have? And at this point, there's no definitive answer to that of it being a yes. So the only real thing that can happen that I might at least be able to muscle up some optimism or hope, like in a positive way, is if they just utilize this prospect capital that they have and using it to bring in an impact player, a star player of sorts, to help bolster this offense in the positive direction. That is the only way, because I don't think they're going to sign Soto as much as I want them to, as much as we should sit here and criticize them for not every single day after the fact that they won't. That's the only way. And, I just think that is such it's such a thing that I feel like a lot of fans just aren't really thinking about. A lot of fans are like, we got to sign Soto. Like, yeah, that would be awesome. That would sum up a lot of problems. But at the same time, like, you have all these assets. They have assets. They can move some of these assets to make the team better. Yeah. Like, bottom line, they have enough assets to make the team better. Remember back in like 2018, 2019, whether it wasn't signing Bryce Harper, but what about the fact that they didn't trade for Nolan Arenado when the Rockies literally gave $50 million to the Cardinals to take the guy, on top of sending a couple washing machines back to Colorado? You could have, if you had the assets that you have now, you could have been part of those conversations, right? Like, it's not even just the free agents. Right, Yelich. It's not just the free agent market. It's the fact that you now have assets that you can use to bring in a star player too. So, of course, a lot of people right now are talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We've been talking about Vladimir Guerrero for a year. Yes, we started it, right?
Credit to us.
I'm just saying that it's not be all on Juan Soto as much as he would be my number one option. It's the fact that you have assets and you can move them to get that big player. Because I don't care what anyone says, this team, it wouldn't have won 83 games if they didn't have good players. They won 83 games because they have good players. They can win 90 plus if they have that guy that puts them over the top, or two. Like we're talking about the Padres with the fact that, even in down years, Machado and Tatis, they still were the top team in the wild card, and now they're going to NLDS. Like, that's where the Cubs got to get. They got to get the one or two guys that are going to change this team. Maybe we're all kind of down on Seiya just because he didn't outperform to a level of what we hoped. But Ryan said, and I looked it up myself, he did outperform his projection.
Like a full win better than what he was projected.
So it's like, as much as his defense was disappointing, he still offensively was better than what even the nerds thought. So I'm just saying that I like Seiya as a offensive weapon that they have. He was consistent last year in terms of providing that, but you need another guy to go with him, and you're on top of the fact that you're going to need guys like PCA to take that step up. And however they utilize Shaw, whether it's like a Javi Baez role in 2016 or whatever, like those guys are going to have to be able to outperform their projection to whoever those prospects are. Like they're going to need some of that, but you have to bring in a guy that you know you're going to get 30 plus bombs out of, and he's going to give you great at bats and is going to be in the middle of the lineup and be a force. That's what they need.
I'll say it every podcast this offseason for 5 months. They need a guy in their lineup that the other team doesn't want to pitch to. Yeah. Every time he comes up, they're afraid that guy's coming through the order. Because right now they have a bunch of guys which are nice and are good, but no team fears anybody in that lineup.
And I feel like part of that was like the Bellinger thing in 2023. Like he was that guy for long stretches of time in 23. They didn't have that at all this year with really anyone. Like I think Seiya was consistently good all year for the first time in his career. But I don't think he even had a stretch. He didn't have a stretch like he had last year in August and September. He didn't have a stretch like Bellinger did throughout the summer in 23. So even Seiya being a really good offensive player wasn't that for the Cubs in the middle of their lineup. So yeah, they do need that. And that's and I mean, like this last point on outperforming projections, like even your established players, stars, can outperform projections. Aaron Judge was projected 9 F4. He ended with 11.2.
Oh, good.
Ohtani was projected 6. Ohtani was projected 6. I believe he ended with like 9.1.
Was also available.
So regardless of like the players on your team, obviously you want your young guys or less established players, whatever, to outperform projections. But like having those guys as stars, while we've been talking about them as like stars at their floor, are still having really good seasons. Stars at their best are having seasons that carry teams, that help you have special seasons. So that's the point. Is like we all know that that they need stars on the Cubs, or at least one star to fill that lineup.
So someone in the chat said I just described Pete Alonso. I did not describe Pete Alonso. Michael Busch is described as Pete Alonso. So, but if you want to have, but to play to his comment, like I said earlier in the show, if you can find a way to get Pete Alonso on this roster with Michael Busch, okay, but you're going to have to do a lot of maneuvering. And I don't see how they're going to be able to do that, especially when we're down on Seiya's defense right now. So, like, that's the thing. Like, if you could move one of these outfielders like Happ or Seiya and then added Pete Alonso with Michael Busch on this team, I'd be up for it. But the way this roster is constructed right now, I don't know how you can have Michael Busch and Pete Alonso on this team.
Final thought on over projections and exceeding projections. Nick Madrigal may exceed projections, but he's still not going to get you to the postseason. Thanks for checking out the CHGO Cubs podcast. Corey and Brendan will be here on Friday, and then we're back on Monday. 11:30 is the time. Thanks for everybody that joined in the live YouTube chat. Hope to see you at the tailgate. And until next time, don't forget, go Mets and fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.